So, Brielle's still playing business owner. My brother Evan laughed, loud enough for everyone to hear. Mom forced a smile. Evan, not today. Evan raised his glass. To her latest failure. My phone buzzed. Caller ID, said Evan's attorney. And I answered, my name is Brielle Carter. I'm 34 years old. I work as a bookkeeper for small businesses. The kind that can't afford fancy accountants. The kind that needs someone who'll fight for every dollar on their behalf. In my family, I play two roles, depending on what's convenient. When they need help, I'm the responsible one. When they want to laugh, I'm the embarrassing one. See, years ago I opened a small boutique. It collapsed after a bad lease and a supplier who scammed me out of everything I'd invested. My family still calls it my little meltdown business. They bring it up at every gathering like it's their favorite sitcom episode. All I've ever wanted is stability. A home that's mine. A life where I don't have to beg the people who are supposed to love me to just respect what I do. I wasn't rich or glamorous. I didn't have a corner office or a company car, but I had something they didn't expect. Over the years, working with small business clients, digging through their records, catching errors and fraud before it ate them alive, I'd learned how to follow money trails. And I'd gotten very, very good at it. If you've ever been treated like your work doesn't count because it doesn't look impressive to other people, hit subscribe. Seriously, have you been the one they mock, but also the one they call when things fall apart? Drop a comment and click hype or like. Let's get into it. Thanksgiving at my parents' house. The dining room smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon candles, but underneath it, something sharper lingered. Tension. The table was full. Mom and Dad at either end, Evan and his girlfriend Sienna. Across from me, our aunt, who repeats everything anyone says, and a couple of Evan's co-workers he'd invited to show off. The food was barely served before Evan turned dinner into his personal comedy set, and the target was me. Tell them how you ran a company for, 8 months? He grinned, fork in one hand, looking around the table for his audience. His friend chuckled. Sienna covered her mouth like she was being polite about it. Evan leaned back in his chair. She was a CEO of folding clothes. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. I looked at Mom. She shifted in her seat. Let's just eat, she said. But she didn't shut him down. She never shut him down. Then Dad, without even looking up from his plate, added his own quiet knife. Maybe you should find something more stable. He said it like a verdict, like a judge who'd already made up his mind and was just reading the sentence out loud. The humiliation spiked when Evan pulled out his phone, scrolled for a second, and found an old photo of my boutique storefront. He held it up and waved it around the table like a joke prop. Look at this. Remember this place? Gone in 8 months. Laughter scattered around the table. I gripped my fork and tried to keep my voice steady. That was years ago. I do real work now. Evan smirked at me, tilting his head like I'd just told a joke I didn't understand. Yeah, counting other people's money because you can't make your own. The table got quiet for a moment, but not the kind of quiet that means someone's about to defend you. The kind that means everyone agrees but doesn't want to say it out loud. Then Evan stood up, holding his wine glass high. I want to make a toast to family success. He looked around the table, pausing for effect, then pointed his glass directly at me. At least you're good for a lesson. A few people clinked glasses. I didn't raise mine. I sat there with the sound of silverware scraping plates filling the silence. Then, right as forks hit plates again and conversations tried to restart, my phone buzzed in my lap. I glanced down. The caller ID read the name of Evan's lawyer. My heart stopped for a full second. Before Thanksgiving, I'd started noticing things. Small things at first, but they added up fast. I realized I wasn't included in the family planning text chain for the holiday. Everyone else had been coordinating for weeks. I was only told last minute. Mom texted me 3 days before. Just bring something easy, okay? Meanwhile, Evan arrived Thanksgiving morning with 2 bottles of expensive wine, and everyone praised him like he'd performed some act of generosity. Aunt Deborah leaned over to me before dinner and whispered, "We didn't want to stress you out, sweetie." Translation? You're not important enough to plan around. That stung. But what happened during dinner was worse. As Evan kept poking at my past, his girlfriend Sienna pulled out her phone and started recording. She angled the camera toward me and Evan like she was capturing a funny family moment. Say the line about the boutique again. Sienna laughed, nudging Evan with her elbow. Evan didn't hesitate. Tell them how you cried in the parking lot. I felt the air leave my lungs. He was talking about the day I locked the boutique door for the last time. The day I sat in my car and cried until my head pounded. And he was using it for content. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip my plate and walk out. But I knew the script. If I reacted, I'd be too sensitive. If I cried, I'd be proving their point. If I left, I'd be dramatic. So I sat there, trapped by the rules they'd written for me. After dinner, while people moved to the living room, Dad pulled me aside in the hallway near the coat closet. His voice was low, almost gentle, which made it worse. Brielle, I need you to help the family out with something. He slid a folded document from his back pocket. Just sign this. It's temporary. Just until Evan's deal closes. I stared at the paper. Before I could even read the first line, Evan appeared in the hallway doorway, arms crossed. Why are you acting like I'm some criminal? He snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't run. I took a breath and asked one question. What exactly am I signing? Evan's jaw tightened. He didn't answer clearly. Instead, he pivoted to emotion, the way he always did. You never support me. Everything I do, you question it. I'm trying to build something for this family, and you can't even sign one piece of paper. His voice cracked like he was the victim. I looked at Dad. Dad looked at the floor. Then Mom appeared behind Evan, wringing a dish towel in her hands. She whispered, please don't make tonight harder. And right then, standing in that dim hallway that smelled like leftover gravy and old carpet, I understood. They weren't asking for help. They were trying to use my clean credit and my silence. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, like a countdown. I couldn't stop. What they didn't know was I'd already seen this pattern before. Charm first, then pressure, then vague paperwork, and finally someone else left holding the bag. I'd watched it happen to 3 of my clients. The details were different, but the shape was always the same. See, I'm not just counting money. Over the years, I'd trained myself in forensic bookkeeping. That means I know how to spot inconsistencies in records, trace where transfers actually go, and match receipts to bank statements to find what doesn't add up. And months before Thanksgiving, I'd started noticing something off in my parents' finances. It started when Mom casually mentioned FEs and short-term loans during a phone call. She sounded confused. That confusion made my stomach drop. I offered to help them budget. Let me just look at your statements, Mom. I'm good with numbers, remember? They handed them over without a second thought. Because to them, I was just Brielle, the one who counts other people's money. What I found kept me up at night. There were transfers with notes like contractor deposit that didn't match any real work done on the house. There were withdrawals that happened right after Evan visited, like clockwork. And there was one email Evan forgot he'd copied me on. He assumed I wouldn't understand it. It referenced an LLC I'd never heard of, payments routed through accounts that didn't belong to my parents, and a timeline that told a very ugly story. So I built my case, not out of revenge, out of protection. I organized everything into a clean folder. Dates, amounts, screenshots, and one timeline that told the truth better than any argument I could ever make at a dinner table. After dinner, while most of the family settled into the living room with coffee and football, I slipped into the kitchen. Tessa was already there, leaning against the counter with her arms folded, watching me like she'd been waiting. Tessa is my cousin, older than me by a couple of years. She's the one who moved out of the family orbit early and stopped playing along with the act. She works as a paralegal now, and she knows exactly what friendly family paperwork looks like when it's actually dangerous. Bree, don't sign a thing, she said, before I even opened my mouth. Not even just to help. I leaned against the fridge and let out a breath. They'll say I'm ruining Thanksgiving. Tessa looked at me hard. They ruined it when they made you the joke, she told me. She'd been near Dad's desk earlier, looking for a pen, and noticed a document with a law firm's letterhead on it. She recognized the name. It was a firm that handles business litigation and asset protection. Evan already had legal representation. He wasn't flying blind. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he needed my signature to finish it. Back in the living room, Evan was getting louder, looser, more confident. The wine had softened his edges, and he was leaning back on the couch like he owned the house. See, nobody's mad. We're fine, he announced to the room. Then he started dropping hints about something big, a property, an investment. He called it a family win and grinned like a man who'd already spent money he didn't have. I stood in the kitchen doorway watching, feeling the knot in my stomach pull tighter. My phone buzzed again. Tessa glanced at it, then looked at me. She nodded toward it slowly. Answer, right now. I felt my throat tighten because I knew whatever was on the other end of that call was going to change everything at this table. Dessert was being passed around. Pumpkin pie, whipped cream, the works. The smell of coffee filled the room, warm and almost peaceful. Almost. Evan leaned forward in his chair, elbows on the table, looking straight at me with that grin I'd seen 1,000 times. Brielle, you want to say what you're thankful for? I'll go first. He paused for effect. I'm thankful some of us didn't waste our lives on a fake business. A few people laughed nervously. Sienna smiled into her coffee. My parents said nothing. My phone buzzed one more time. I looked at Tessa. She gave me one small nod. I picked up the phone, answered it, and set it face up on the table. Speaker on. Hello, this is Brielle. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, measured. Miss Carter, I'm calling regarding the financial documentation you provided connected to your parents' accounts and Mr. Carter's recent transactions. I wanted to confirm we've received everything and that the summary is being reviewed. The table froze. Every fork stopped midair. The sound of the football game in the other room suddenly felt deafening in the silence. Evan's face changed first. The grin dissolved. What documentation? He said, his voice cracking at the edges. The lawyer continued, unbothered. Your records are very thorough, Miss Carter. The dates, transfer amounts, and account inconsistencies you flagged have been cross-referenced. We'll be in touch with next steps. Evan shot up from his chair, palms flat on the table. Don't listen to her. She doesn't know what she's talking about. The lawyer's voice didn't waver. Mr. Carter, I'm speaking to Miss Carter because she's the one who compiled the ledger and contacted our office. Evan's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The lawyer went on. Next steps included stopping further transfers from my parents' accounts, potential civil action depending on findings, and notifying the bank's fraud department if patterns warranted it. I watched the color drain from my mother's face. She gripped the edge of the table with both hands. Dad stared at Evan, not with anger, not yet. With something worse, recognition, like he was seeing his son clearly for the very first time. I ended the call and set the phone down gently. I didn't do this to hurt you, I said, looking at Evan. My voice was steady like concrete. I did it because you were dragging them down, and you were trying to drag me with you. Evan hissed through his teeth. You're jealous. You always were. Tessa stood up from her chair and spoke clearly, loud enough for the whole room. No, she's just the only one telling the truth. I didn't scream. I didn't celebrate. I didn't stand over Evan like some victor on a battlefield. That's not what this was. I set boundaries. I told my parents calmly that I would help them protect their finances. I would sit with them, go through every statement, and make sure no more money disappeared. But I would not be their shield while Evan kept taking. Evan stormed out of the house, slamming the front door so hard the wreath fell off. He was already on the phone in the driveway, accusing everyone else. Classic deflection. Mom cried quietly at the table, not just from shock, but from something deeper, from realizing how long she'd excused it, how long she'd praised the one who was stealing from them while mocking the one who was trying to protect them. Dad sat very still for a long time. Then he said something I never expected. We need to fix this, not later, not after the holidays, now. I left Thanksgiving early with Tessa. We stepped out the front door into cold night air that hit my face like a splash of water. And I swear it felt like relief, like the first full breath I'd taken in years. Some families don't clap when you grow. They clap when you stay small. That night, I stopped performing smallness for their comfort. If you've ever been laughed at in front of everyone, especially by family, like your life is a punchline, then you know how heavy that feels. Subscribe if you're building something real while people keep calling it nothing. Share your story in the comments. Have you ever been publicly humiliated at a holiday table or pressured to help with money you knew was going the wrong way? Click hype to help this story reach others who need it. Standing up for yourself is tough. If you've been there, subscribe and become part of our community. Let me know. This story helped by clicking hype and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.